Did you know that our life is a constant struggle, even when you're asleep? Because, for example, in your stomach, powerful enzymes and acids attack the food inside, breaking it down thanks to their aggressive properties. Hello and a warm welcome to episode 15 of Mars in the zodiac signs. Mars, among other things, represents our struggle here on Earth. Because, in fact, at its core, our existence is really about just one thing: transformation. And for something to be transformed, it needs energy. And this energy can either be increased or decreased, or even lost. As I already explained in the last episode, Venus in the zodiac signs, the most valuable energy we have at our disposal is the energy we possess, the energy of the heart and the energy of sexuality. And in doing so, a very typical pattern keeps appearing. There are, in fact, people who are energy givers and others who are energy takers. And this imbalance means that no real growth can occur. No symbiosis is created. Instead, the person who is energetically richer is literally tapped into, and this happens, among other things, on a molecular level. But I've already explained that in previous videos, specifically in the 5-minute intro video and in the first part of the introductory videos. Both are linked below in the description. It's a very interesting topic. It's about energy theft through thoughts and feelings, but of course also through actions, which is, of course, the most obvious. Yes, and in the end, it always comes down to just two possibilities. Either you receive energy or keep your energy, or you give it away. That is the basic principle of the game. And that is exactly the point where people differ from one another. There are the loving, the responsible, the constructive ones. Those who are genuinely interested in real, shared growth, in true togetherness, and who actively do something to make it happen. And then there are the others, who in truth only think about themselves. They might pretend to be loving or friendly, but in truth they are empty inside, narcissistic, or simply too lazy. But so you can understand all this even better, I've picked out 3 typical examples, that is, 3 that apply to many people. Perhaps you'll recognize yourself or others in the following situations. The first example concerns the workplace. You go there every day, you give it your all. But your boss abuses his power. He controls you. He nitpicks or threatens you with consequences if you don't toe the line. You go home. You can't switch off. You toss and turn in bed, thinking, did I do something wrong? Am I going to lose my job? Am I that incompetent? Am I that bad? Your energy flows into fears, worries, and inner tension. Basically, your energy flows straight to your boss. And that's exactly what weakens you. Instead of flourishing, you're blocked. And a considerable portion of your energy goes directly to your boss, through your heart center. He basically gets you right at your weak spot, hits you straight in the heart, and that's exactly where the siphoning begins. Because, in the end, he feeds off your heart energy on an energetic level. And now comes the best part. According to studies, 30 to 35% of all employees experience bullying or what is also called bossing at some point in their working life. Yes, and you can imagine how many people are affected by this and how much energy is lost here. And an incredible 30 to 40% of all relationships experience emotional abuse within the partnership. And that would be example number 2. A narcissist or a manipulative person deliberately exploits their victim's self-doubt to gain energy. For example, he repeatedly says things like, "You can't do it anyway. You do everything wrong. Nothing you touch ever works out. You're good for nothing. You're stupid." The victim starts to doubt themselves, feels incapable, and gradually loses their zest for life, self-confidence, and energy. And the best part is, The victim even gets blamed for it all. That means the narcissist twists everything around so that he puts the blame on the victim, and the victim, with their self-doubt, traumas, and vulnerabilities, actually believes that it's their own fault, that they've done something wrong. And a third example would be when children are used as leverage in relationships, specifically to intimidate or control the other person. At best, you get comments like, "You have to do it this way because of the children," or, "Well then, you just won't get to see the children anymore." And in the worst case, the other person is denied access to the children for no reason, just to steer the partner in the direction one wants for purely selfish reasons, of course. That, of course, hits the other partner right in the heart. The love for one's own children is manipulatively exploited and drains an enormous amount of energy. Out of fear of loss or feelings of guilt, an unfair dependency develops. The blame is shifted again. The victim feels guilty, even though they haven't done anything at all. This is extremely harmful for the children. They are drawn into the manipulation, experience conflicts of loyalty, and carry the burden of guilt that isn't even theirs to begin with. And here, in general, in separation conflicts involving children, 25% of those affected report that children are used by one parent as a tool to put pressure on the other. 25%. And this is particularly serious because exactly the same thing happens to the children. They are robbed of their heart energy. And depending on the precise severity and extended duration of this significant strain, and of course the particular child's own unique circumstances, it may, regrettably, never fully recover from this profound damage for the entire rest of its life, and will likewise be perpetually forced to steal vital heart energy from those individuals around it, aside from the various psychological or physical illnesses that will undoubtedly and inevitably arise. In cases of sudden overweight from primary school age, sleep disturbances, behavioral problems, or other noticeable issues, it is definitely worth taking a closer look to see if such abuse might be taking place. Here's an example with two magnets that I place opposite each other. The sides that repel each other, as in this case, represent situations where there is conflict or resistance. For example, in a relationship, at work, or in everyday life. And this is where tension arises. You can really feel it clearly when you hold the two magnets close together. They practically repel each other. A stable resistance is created. In this case, the forces remain balanced. But now, look what happens when one magnet gives way. The one who gives way, in our case, the victim, is pushed back or falls over. Just like my magnet. Transferred to human life, this profoundly means that anyone who constantly gives in, by ignoring their own essential needs, by neglecting themselves completely, ultimately loses vital energy. Because there is enormous energy in this tension. And use it for exactly this reason. Manipulative people often use this particular point, this sore spot, our inherent weak points, because that is precisely where the greatest energy can be found. Or, in other words, our vital heart energy, for example, through a sudden shock, because that is exactly where the heart is extremely wide open and is therefore quite often provoked by such individuals. In plain language, this means that if you constantly submit yourself, you lose energy. Only those who stand up for themselves, respect their boundaries, and maintain their position can preserve their own energy and act effectively. Yes, and here you really need to know how to help yourself, because depending on the situation, it may be necessary to act strategically. Some problems are easier to solve, while others are more difficult, for example when children are involved. If necessary, You may also need to refer to laws regarding coercion, discrimination, or to review custody rights. Because one good thing is that in many countries, especially in Germany, a lot is clearly regulated by law. Often, it is enough just to secure evidence. And strangely enough, something very interesting happens at exactly this point. Because as soon as you see through the game and actually have evidence in your hands, not just empty words or well-meaning advice, since those are absolutely useless, the manipulative person loses their power. And when they have no more means or weapons, they suddenly change their tune. They start acting all nice and friendly again. But this is exactly where the danger lies, because this phase must not be used as an excuse to fall back into old patterns, but rather to stabilize new, humane, moral rules. Because, in truth, the manipulative person hasn't changed one bit. They have simply realized that their source of energy is in danger, and are now trying to turn things around again. The bitter truth is that such people are neither able nor willing to truly change, even though many victims hope for it. And why that is, and what the reasons behind it are, we'll take a closer look at in Phase 5. Because Phase 5 is all about the crucial questions. How do I free myself from situations that weaken me and drain my energy? How do I stop losing energy? How do I get my strength back? Assert my will, develop strategies, and implement them effectively and decisively. And we will be perfectly prepared for this Phase 5, since Phase 1 is all about the feelings, which we will have come to know perfectly by then. That means we know how we feel, we know why we feel, we know when we feel what. And in Phase 2, it's all about love, meaning we've also covered that, feelings of love and everything to do with relationships. And in Phase 3, we deal with thoughts and intellect. That means we will also have come to know our thoughts. We will know how we think, what we think, why we think, and when we think. And we will also know how to use them to our advantage. And in Phase 4, we will have recognized our core self and our ego, so that in Phase 5 we can finally truly turn our weaknesses into strengths, because that's exactly what it's all about. We will no longer be mere victims, but we will truly make that powerful energy our very own, the inherent energy we've clearly seen that exists between the powerful magnets, and we will indeed do so without even having to do anything at all. The other person practically gives it to us with their truly immoral and utterly selfish behavior, without us having to do anything at all, whatsoever, indeed. That is then our Phase 5. Right, so now I have the list next to me, the new planets list, which you've already received by email if you're already taking part. If you're not yet involved and you're new, you can download these lists for free from my website, and you'll find the link below in the video description. Exactly, because today it's Mars in the zodiac signs, that's today's list. And if any meanings are missing, or if nothing fits, you'll also find another link below in the description. That one is called Additional Meanings. It also leads to my website, and there you'll find even more meanings, in case nothing fits or if you want to look further. Because that simply saves a huge amount of paperwork, when you only need a fraction of the meanings anyway. So here you'll find the roughest, the most important, the most general meanings. There are more on my website, and you can add those individually as needed. And yes, we'll definitely need that when we start with Phase 1, so you'll know which meanings fit where. If nothing fits at all, if nothing applies, then please mark that, because then, of course, you'll want to take a closer look at why that is, because there are probably planetary connections or other reasons why nothing fits. And you'll also need to have a horoscope created for yourself. I'll do that with you in a video as well, which is linked below, the horoscope creation video, and it only takes 10 minutes. You'll need that too, so you know exactly where your Mars sign was at the time of your birth, in which zodiac, in which section. Right, so let's take a look at the list. At the very top, we see the Mars symbol, which is what we're focusing on now. And first, let's see what it means when Mars is in Aries, when the Mars symbol is in the section of Aries. This is the specific section right here, where I'm clearly circling with Mars. That's the well-known Aries symbol. And if your personal Mars symbol, which we've just observed and which is prominently at the very top of the list, is indeed located within this particular 30-degree section, then your Mars sign is definitely Aries. And that means that at your birth, the red planet Mars was in the red section of Aries, in the red section of the sky belonging to Aries, because the 12 zodiac signs are also our 12 directions in the sky. And Mars stands, among other things, for the body, for willpower, for action, and for struggle, for deeds. And on the bright side of Aries, so when everything is positive, when everything is well placed, this can mean, among other things, that the person is very athletic. There is a great drive to act, a fighting spirit, strong willpower, and assertiveness. On the shadow side, however, there is rashness, a lack of strategy, aggressiveness, and heat-related inflammations. As for the heat-related inflammations, this is primarily because there is simply too much fire concentrated in one specific place, and if this particular concentration is also unfavorably positioned, then these heat-related inflammations could indeed pose a significant health problem here. Otherwise, for example, in our fighting example, if we were to consider a scenario where a formidable boss possessed this particular constellation, that would indeed serve as a very typical and illustrative example. This is especially true when the boss, without warning, suddenly and quite impulsively slips into this highly aggressive and intensely attacking mode, demonstrating a significant shift in their combat behavior. This can often happen completely out of the blue, and it can be even worse, even more intense. If Uranus is also involved here, those are the really sudden things, where you're just going about your work as usual and then, out of nowhere, the bomb goes off again. And the result is that you're in a state of constant, ongoing stress, because you always have to be afraid that at any moment, something is going to come round the corner. So you never really trust the peace, because that's exactly his strength, to unsettle the other person precisely in that moment of shock. And that's how he always gets what he wants, because for just 1 second, you're always caught off guard. You'd need to be constantly aware, and LT, break time equals 0.5s in GT, constantly observing the entire situation. And that also means that you often go around feeling closed off, that you're anxious and closed-hearted, and generally, in this particular constellation, it's a significant advantage that you almost always win in the moment because you're impulsive and because, in that precise moment, you can simply unsettle others. You bring it on so suddenly, so unexpectedly, and so impulsively, with such immense force, that you almost always end up with the upper hand, with the better cards, unless the other person knows this and prepares for it, maybe even strategically. Because that's the crucial weak point here. That's what's usually missing, unless he's truly aware of it and has diligently worked on it. But normally, that's simply not the case. Yes, and in this way, you can free yourself from it in the long term, or even in the short term. It always depends on the situation, and at some point, you can turn the tables. Right, let's continue now with Taurus. Taurus is the symbol here, the section I'm going through with Mars. And if your Mars symbol is in there, then your Mars sign is Taurus. And that means that the red Mars was in the green section of Taurus at the time of your birth. And on the bright side, this can mean, among other things, physically robust, enduring, steadfast, goal-oriented, stable. Yes, so this constellation usually enjoys optimal health. Unless, of course, other planets or other constellations interfere with or override this. Then, on the shadow side, this would mean being sluggish, immobile, lethargic, overweight, strong. Yes, and here the definite advantage would be endurance, endless stamina, and not being stressed at all. There's a good English saying, slow and steady wins the race. So, slowly and surely, you win the race. So that's a really big plus point. The downside, of course, is if you do things too slowly, if you get too comfortable, which can then lead to being overweight, lethargic. So cozy, couch and all that. Right, let's continue with Gemini. Gemini, that's the symbol here, where I drive around with Mars, this 30-degree section. And if your Mars symbol is in here, then your Mars sign is Gemini. And that means that at your birth, the red planet Mars was in the orange-colored section, in the orange direction of Gemini in the sky. And on the bright side, this can mean being adaptable, quick, mentally alert, tactically clever, agile. Usually also very clever. That's really the clever fox type. You can imagine him in action as a market stall owner, standing in the middle with all the children gathered around him. So, he sells the most because he can talk everyone round so well and sells his things so skillfully, so nimbly, and so cleverly that he gets rid of everything. An ideal salesman, really. Yes, clever and shrewd. On the negative side, though, flighty, lacking focus, nervous problems. Then let's continue with Cancer. Here's the section where I drive around with Mars. This is Cancer, the astrological symbol for Cancer, and if your personal Mars sign is positioned in there, then your Mars sign is indeed Cancer. That profoundly means that the fiery red planet Mars was located within the distinct blue section of the zodiacal constellation of Cancer at the precise moment of your birth, and in a truly positive and beneficial sense that specifically translates to tenacious perseverance, deeply intuitive emotional strategies, and a powerfully protective nature. Yes, that's more the type of person who isn't necessarily whiny, because there are also whiny Cancers who like to indulge in great suffering. But if Mars is in Cancer, then that's usually offset to a good extent. It's still very empathetic, very emotional, but then it's more like, right, let's truly get on with it, let's actually do it, let's take decisive action. We really need to find a practical solution, more solution-oriented and much less lost in feelings. On the shadow side, however, there's hypercaution, defensiveness, glandular and gait disorders. Yes, and that can also be a health issue, because Cancer is already very watery by nature. Emotionally, it's all water, feelings, very little fire. If, on top of that, the placement is also unfavorable, if Mars is badly positioned or there's a general lack of fire, then this can, for example, manifest as inflammation of the salivary glands, as blockages in the bile ducts, or as problems with the sinuses, because the water isn't being drained away. It builds up because fire is lacking, since fire is responsible for allowing the water to flow smoothly, and if that's not supported, if it's also badly positioned, then such problems can arise. Then there's Leo. Leo is the symbol here, where I circle around with Mars. And if your Mars is here, your Mars symbol, then your Mars sign is Leo, and that truly means that the fiery red Mars was in the specific section of Leo at the precise time of your birth. Yes, and on the bright side, this is certainly a very strong and dynamic personality, a very striking and noticeable one, which can manifest in remarkable fearlessness, powerful and decisive action, exceptional leadership strength, and truly original strategies. On the shadow side, however, it can show as excessive impulsiveness, perhaps even a lack of thoughtful consideration. Cardiovascular strain. Yes, here we are again with the fire element. That means there's too much fire again. You'd need some balance with water there. If that's already well provided for in the horoscope through other connections, then you don't need it. Here, we're only talking about the pure meaning of this position, without having considered the others so far. Let's continue with Virgo. And this is the symbol, where I'm currently circling around with Mars, and if your Mars symbol is in here, then your Mars sign is Virgo, which means that the red Mars was in the orange section of Virgo at the time of your birth. On the bright side, this can mean very clean, highly efficient movements, strong endurance, a clear strategy, and a keen sense of body awareness. On the shadow side, however, too much overthinking can lead to too little action, that you don't act enough because you're constantly in your head and analyzing everything. Then there's stress, psychosomatic complaints, nerves, inhibition. Mars in Virgo generally tends towards stress and nervousness, and Mars intensifies the pressure here. And the result is then tension, psychosomatic complaints, such as with the intestines, the muscles, or the nerves. Then let's continue with Libra. Libra is the symbol here, where I'm currently circling with Mars. And if your Mars symbol is in here, then your Mars sign is Libra. And here, at your very birth, the radiant red planet Mars was positioned in the elegant green Libra direction. And that truly means, on the bright and positive side, you possess elegant, balanced movements, creative, smart solutions, and a very good sense of one's own body. On the shadow side, however, it wavers, reacts too late, and misses opportunities. Yes, due to indecisiveness and from constantly overthinking when it comes to making a choice, yes, you end up reacting too late or, in the worst case, not at all, and then you've missed your chances. Then there's the suppression of anger, which in turn leads to tension. Next, we have Scorpio, that's this particular one here, where I'm circling around with the planet Mars, and if your personal Mars symbol is located in here, then your Mars sign is indeed Scorpio. And that truly means that Mars, the vibrant red planet Mars, was positioned within the red Scorpio section at the precise time of your birth. That is, at that moment, it was at home. And here we're dealing with a very, truly strong-willed person who is indeed an absolute master of uncompromising and also strategic actions in their approach. Because here, Mars, the powerful red warrior planet, truly meets the strategic and intense Scorpio. Yes, so if you genuinely want to beat someone like that, you definitely need to prepare very well, study carefully, and keep a really close eye, because this won't be an easy opponent at all. Yes, but of course even they have their weaknesses, and those would be things like extreme physical strain. Yes, they push themselves to the absolute limit, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, they might just collapse. Then, yes, there's the risk of injury, tendons, muscles, organs under constant stress. Then there's Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the symbol where I travel around with Mars. And if your Mars symbol is here, then your Mars sign is Sagittarius. And that means that at your birth, the red Mars, the red warrior planet Mars, was in the light blue Sagittarius direction. And that often means, on the bright side, a joy of movement, motivation, an optimistic fighting spirit. On the shadow side, however, it can mean impulsive rashness, exaggeration, being overweight, and excess. Yes, because Sagittarius is also known for that they tend towards expansion, gaining weight, excess, and a risk of addiction. And if Mars is badly positioned or unfavorably influenced, then again, action and movement are lacking here. Willpower, fire. Yes, and that can manifest in this way. Here we have Capricorn, where I'm moving the mouse around. And if your Mars symbol is here, then your Mars sign is Capricorn. And in this case, the red Mars was in the violet direction of Capricorn at your birth. And on the light side, that means disciplined, resilient, self-controlled, effective pragmatic solutions. Yes, that's where the warrior planet Mars meets the intelligent, logical, structured Capricorn, who always wins in the long run. Because Capricorn immediately draws up a 5-year plan and has already thought everything through, so it's hard to catch him off guard. You need to know that. You have to prepare yourself for it. Yes, he has his shadow side, which is rigidity and inflexibility. He can't look left. He's planned everything out for 5 years, doesn't see left or right. You exploit weakness, tension, joint problems, bones, hardness, doggedness. Then we have Aquarius. That's the symbol here, the one I'm circling right now. And if your Mars symbol is in here, then your Mars sign is Aquarius. And that means that the red planet Mars was in the violet direction of Aquarius at the time of your birth. And in the positive sense, that means innovative strategies that no one would ever have expected. The Trojan horse looks outdated in comparison. Then, quick action, nerves of steel. On the negative side, however, nervousness, strong electrical tension, which in turn leads to tension in the body. Then let's continue with Pisces. And that's the symbol I'm circling right now. And if your Mars symbol is in here, then your Mars sign is Pisces. And that means that at the time of your birth, the red Mars was in the light blue section of Pisces. Among things, this means in the positive sense, instinctive actions, creative strategies. That's also Pisces is the classic example here. It works well when everything's on fire. Right in the moment, when everything's burning down, world ending, they truly excel, knowing exactly what to do without thought. On the shadow side, unclear actions, escapism, addiction, lack of focus. If you enjoyed this video and think it could help other people who are dealing with narcissists, manipulative individuals, or are in other difficult situations, then feel free to share it. Because many affected people feel ashamed of their situation, even though that's completely unnecessary, as it actually affects half the world. Because either we withstand this tension, invent strategies, find solutions, or we let ourselves be drained so much that in the end there's no energy left, not even enough to free ourselves. And on the other hand, that's exactly where the opportunity lies, our opportunity, because this tension is full of power. But if we master it, then we won't be destroyed. Quite the opposite. We catapult ourselves onto a new, higher energetic level, because in the end, everything is transformation. Alright, I'd say, until next episode. That about Jupiter in zodiac signs. Yes, and until then, best. Ciao, ciao.